Welcome folks, I'm Nancy of Paper Moon Tarot, and I wanted to do a VR to Candy Soul and Soil, who had a challenge for folks to look at tarot decks as if they were dating them. So that's what I'm going to do right now, kind of move through some of my collection that fit her suggestions and see what we get. So the prompts that Candy had start with the Cheapskate Date. Who did you date because they were cheap as chips, and what was the outcome? Well, the deck that I got, what I thought was really inexpensively for what it was, is the Wildwood Tarot. For about $16, you get, this nice hardcover box and beautiful book, and the book is actually very interesting, and the cards. And for $16, most decks I get are at least 20. So I found it to be a pretty cheap deck. So what happened with it? Well, one thing that happened with it is it was one of the first decks I trimmed, and I didn't do a great job. In fact, I decided to leave the titles on it down here, and then I went ahead and of course chopped that off. On one of them I had it upside down in the Fiskar cutter and lost that, and to me that just kind of ruined the whole thing. I was basically missing a card. I could have taped it on or something, so I don't get back to it too much, but I should. One of the reasons I got it is because everyone raves about it, and one of the reasons I trimmed it is I thought, well, it's so inexpensive, I can always buy another copy if I screw it up. I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. I love the art in this deck. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. One of the reasons I don't use it all that often is that it's kind of got its own system, which I have not yet mastered, and I'm not sure I want to. But I do love the cards. If I could read them as just traditional tarot, which it's close to being able to do, but it's a little bit of a challenge. So anyway, this was the deck that I thought I got pretty cheaply. It's beautiful, and I mauled it trimming it, but I may just, oh, there's the card that I ruined. I chopped it on the wrong part. So I may get back to buying the second copy because it is inexpensive. So that's my cheap date. Okay. The second question is the slow burner date. And that's the one you weren't sure about on first meeting, but over time you suspect it's turning to love. And that one I actually got pretty recently, and it's the Darkness of Light Tarot. And I love the cardstock, which is big for me. And the images, at first, I was like, well, it's kind of maybe collagey a little bit, and it's very dark. There isn't a lot of color going on in this. And I wasn't sure that the images were quirky enough, interesting enough for my taste. So it just kind of, I put it away, looked through it a few times, put it away, and then I just keep pulling it out. And I'm finding that, yeah, there is color, it's subtle. The images are really beautiful, and the art style has just grown on me, and so now it's one of those decks that I keep pulling out and working with, and I think it's a keeper. It's like I said, again, not the quirky art or artsy art that I usually go in for. It's very much your medieval looking tarot on a lot of the cards, but the cardstock, the images, everything's kind of come together to make it that slow burner deck that I'm coming to appreciate more and more. The blind date, this one is described as because we are impulsive humans and sometimes we just rush in. Who did you date without looking or thinking? Well, this is a deck, the Simplicity Tarot. I saw it on Etsy late at night. Never look at Etsy late at night or Kickstarter or any of those because you'll buy things on impulse. This deck, I think it's a limited edition of about 500, so I was kind of getting this, ooh, limited edition, you know, maybe it'll be valuable, or maybe I'll be one of the few to have it. The card backs are beautiful. The card stock is very nice matte finish. It's got watercolor images and keywords on it. And I'm still new enough to tarot. I don't mind keywords. Sometimes they help me out. And the images are very simple. The cards are very clean looking and so forth. But I really don't know what to do with it. I think it's too simple. And sometimes one of the things that bothers me is that the keywords, like this is nurturing and security for the Queen of Coins. And they're different parts of speech. And I know that sounds stupid, but I'm a writer. And so nurturing and securing would work, or nurture and security, but nurturing and security, it goes all through the deck, and it's just one of those little things that bugs me. So if I were a rank beginner or a child, it's kind of like children's illustrations. I think it's good for those folks. But I rushed into it, and I like it. I'm not probably going to get rid of it right away, but it was an impulse buy totally, and I really haven't figured out how I would use it. So that was the blind date. The rebound date is the one you keep going to break up with, but you keep getting pulled back together. Well, that's this one that I got early on in my collecting of things, and it is the White Sage Tarot. I love the art. I even got her Oracle deck, and I don't even use Oracle decks because I love her artwork. It's just gorgeous. They're simple, they're in a tin, which is kind of fun. The cardstock is very decent. I think it's US Games. The images are simple, and that's fine. They do speak to me of what the card is. There's a little otter in the water with a cup, so it's the Queen of Cups. However, although I've been growing to like pip decks better and better, this pip deck is just too pippish. It's too simple. It's not pretty enough. I mean, they're pretty, but they're not like a beautiful Marseille deck that has incredibly gorgeous scroll work and artwork. The pips are very simplistic, and they are just the 2 or 3 or 4 of things. Again, here's the Chariot. So these cards, the majors, I love. The court cards, I love. But the 9 of Wands. It's a whole bunch of wands. So, but I love the art. So I keep coming back to this deck, even though when I do take it out and look at it, I'm just not inspired by these pips. So it's one of those decks that I would never get rid of. I love the art, and I got it early on. But again, the pips kind of boring. The majors kind of interesting artwork. So that was my Rebound Date. Still love it though. Still love it. It's beautiful. Okay, number 5, the Surprise Love Affair deck. Surprise Love Affair Date, sorry. The one you thought would be just okay, but from first meeting it was love at first sight, and it took me by surprise. In fact, I just did a video on decks that surprised me, and this is one of them. This is the Tarot de Ozarks. And it surprised me because I just impulse bought it. It had a good review, I think, on the Hermit's Cave channel, and the art looked pretty, but it was Marseille, and I really hadn't gotten into Marseille at that point. So I was, it's not going to be great, but I'll have it in my collection. Maybe the art will be interesting. It's the Tarot de Ozarks, and I absolutely adore it. It's really changed my mind about Marseille. There's so much energy in these images. It is so vibrant. Now, where the pips on White Sage don't thrill me, the pips here are wonderful, and there's such variety of color. The majors are beautiful. I'm not crazy about the card backs, but that's okay. There's another pip, but the color scheme is very different, and they just each have their own energy, and I love that. Very sort of contemporary take on Marseille, and again, here's one with this beautiful flush of color down here, and flowers, and just various things going on. Not everyone looks exactly alike, which is where the energy of the deck comes to me. So this really turned me around on Marseille. I love this deck. It's one of my favorite decks, and was that surprise love affair, and it's going to last a long time. So the Not My Type deck, the one I went on thinking it wasn't really my cup of tea, but what the hell, that would be the Neo Tarot. I got this thinking it's going to be bold and graphic and clean, and I'm going to really like this. I'm learning the tarot, and the images are straightforward. They're pretty RWS-ish, and clean, simple, and I like graphics and graphical things. But you know what? It's diverse. It's got a lot going for it. It's decent card stock, but it just, you know, it's not my type. Me and it ain't gonna go out for very long. But I keep it because it's a decent deck, and it's different than other decks I have. I mean, that's a cool death card, I think, but the whole deck, the deck as a whole, doesn't do enough to hold my interest, and it's just not my type. You can see from the Tarot de Ozarks, that art I love. This art I find pretty boring after a very short time. So that's not my type. Number 7 is I may have to delete your number date. The one that really didn't work, but you still haven't broken up with it yet, and what's stopping you? Well, that is probably a surprise to some, because I think a lot of people love this deck. It's the Slow Tarot. I love the cardstock. It's nice linen cardstock, nice and flexible cardstock. I find it's kind of contemporary. And almost too contemporary for me. There are cards that I really like. This one is probably one of them that I really like. And then there are cards that I find a little too, when I say Norman Rockwell-ish, that's probably not accurate, but magazine illustration, too traditional looking for me, not the kind of artwork that appeals to me. There's another one that, this one doesn't really appeal to me. It's almost too modern. The aces in this deck are absolutely gorgeous. If all of them were borderless and beautiful like these, that would be great. The strength card I love. So this is one of those decks that I love the card stock. There are maybe a dozen cards in this deck. The Fool, strength. The Star, as I recall, I really love. The Magician, again, it's sort of like a children's book illustration. I'd like my Magician to be a little more mystical than that. Again, an Ace of Swords, simple, beautiful. So I know this artist is capable of producing art that I like, and then there's other art that, well, this is another one that it's sort of like an illustration by Norman Rockwell, and that's just not my style of art. But it's so well done, and there is art in it that I really like, that I keep pulling it out and wanting to love it, and loving parts of it. So it's, I may have to delete your number. really from the description, the one that really didn't work but you haven't broken up with it yet, really doesn't totally work for me, but there's enough good stuff about it that I can't break up with it. I think I want to keep it. It's a nice deck. And for certain people, if I'm reading for a certain type of person, I think it would work well. It's a gentle deck. It's an easy deck. It's a pretty deck. But that would be not my type. I'm sorry, the one I may have to delete. Okay, the Forever Love, the True Love. This deck, I just adore. This is Scylla Conway's Intuitive Tarot. And I haven't been naming the creators of these decks, but I will list them below. So, sorry, I forgot about that. Scylla Conway's Intuitive Tarot, I absolutely love. It is my true love deck. I love that the titles are clean and easy to read. I have trouble with decks where I have to try and figure out what the heck card is that. I love the use of color in this deck. Look at that. Four of Wands, Four of Batons. It's homecoming. There's this little hourglass with little people on the edge who are walking, towards their village. They're coming home. And it's done in such a fascinating way with this little hourglass image. Strength. The art is vibrant. The colors are beautiful. The cardstock I love. It's really nice, slick, but not super shiny cardstock. Very Art Deco kind of art. Very interesting, and clearly this is a really good artist. But there's that Art Deco look. It feels like something out of Atlas Shrugged or Metropolis. And I like it. I know some people have said, well, those are odd faces, but it's a style. It's stylized, and I think the style is beautiful. It's also very consistent, which I like. This deck is clearly of a whole, of a piece. And beautiful, beautiful colors and so on. So anyway, this is just a deck that I love, and it's my forever love. I think it's my favorite deck, and it's the deck I would never part with, never. So that was the Forever Love. The Stormy On and Off Date. I have to reach for this one. Let's see, the one you can't stay away from, equal parts passion, lust, and fighting. The one you have to have a break from but can't stay away from either. That would be my Dame Darcy Alice. I love, that's why this is so stormy on off. I like the art. It's fun. I find it busy. I have to really look hard to figure out what's going on. Although the print is big, so I can usually figure out what the card is by reading, there is so much going on in these cards that it's actually kind of hard to pull it all in, to take it in, and to interpret it, or to say, oh, there's a something in there, and that probably means this. It's like there's everything in there. But it's quirky, which I love. The cardstock is great. It's, again, got the clear titles on it. That's nice. I like the big print. And I love Alice in Wonderland. Who doesn't? Lewis Carroll. Some brilliant stuff going on in his books. And the characters obviously recognizable. Humpty Dumpty for the tower. Nice, fun card backs. And pretty. Some of them, real pretty in this cartoony art style. But I pull it out because I love the cardstock. It's fun. I look through it and I say it's not helping me read them that much. But I have a lot of decks like that, or a few decks at least, that I love the art. I love the quality of the deck. I pull it out and I flip through it and I look at the art and I really don't read with it. So that's the Stormy On Off Date. It's definitely a deck I love. I will never get rid of it, but I kind of put it away and then think, I'm gonna look at that again. That's my Stormy On Off. The Friends with Benefits deck. Okay. This is one I got really early on when I was just a couple years ago, starting out with tarot, and was buying mainly mass market decks from Amazon. And I always liked it. It's the Universal Fantasy Tarot. And it's beautiful. The art is beautiful. And it's weird. It's got weird creatures in it, but really beautiful artwork, I think. Look at this world card. But there she is dancing on top of buildings, you know. Beautiful cards. Not totally traditional. There's our tower. And you have to think about that one a little bit. The High Priestess. Look at her. She's like, I don't know what kind of throne or dragon it is she's riding on. The faces here. It is a fantasy deck, and so the artwork is fascinating. It's not one I pull out all the time. For a while, it was my absolute favorite when I had way less decks. But it's one that if I really want one that I can read the cards, even though they're quirky art and quirky images, they're true to Rider-Waite-Smith and system, and I can read them, and they're beautiful, and I can clearly see what each card is from the print, and they fascinate me. They're cards that I can kind of look at and study and say, wow, look what's going on there. The guy's riding this pterodactyl or something in the sky with his trumpet. So there's interesting stuff going on, but it totally reads his judgment, and it's beautiful. So that is my Friends with Benefits date. I keep coming back to it, and it just fits right in whenever I do pick it up. So that is my VR to Candy. Thank you, Candy. It was a wonderful challenge with these questions, fun, and really appreciate it. My channel is pretty new. If you're interested, subscribe or give me a comment down below so I know what you guys are thinking or what you're interested in hearing me do. And that's it for this one. Thanks, guys.